after that whole experience, I feel like I was a much better appraiser, and I was on a much better path toward really understanding what I was doing.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out at the podcast chair once again. Got a great guest coming up. Another appraiser stories for us, folks. Boy, we've been inundated the last little bit with people being willing to tell their story and to have us get to know them a little bit better. I want to pause here before I introduce you to that wonderful guest and remind you that we're sponsored by three great companies. One of them is my E&O Insurance. And folks, I went with another company for many, many years. Frankly, was never happy and until I switched over to OREP Insurance. OREP is found at orep.org. That's OREP.org. We're sponsored by Alamode. I've been with Alamode forever. And I will continue to stick with them as long as they continue to give me the value that I'm looking to get. Alamode is where it's at, alamode.com or 800 Alamode. And finally, we are sponsored, of course, by my great friends over at DataMaster. Folks, DataMaster was created by Rick, who is an appraiser for many, many years, and created a system that allowed appraisers to save time. And we all know that when you save time, you save money, you increase the quality of your report. It's DataMaster. You can find them at datamasterusa.com. Make sure you add that USA, datamasterusa.com. Well, folks, as I mentioned, we got another appraiser stories for you. Another individual out there appraising his tail off and willing to tell his story. His name is Tim Lullis. He comes to us from LA, Los Angeles, California. Tim, welcome to the program, my friend.
Thank you, Dustin. So good to be here. I'm honored to be on the show.
Well, I am honored to have you on the show. I really appreciate you taking time to be on the show and to tell your story. Sure. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We were talking a little bit off the air that you've appraised on both sides of the seaboard, if you will.
Yeah, well, it's funny, right? Because when I was a kid, I never said to myself, oh, when I grow up, I really want to be a real estate appraiser. So when I was a kid, I really wanted to be a musician. I wanted to play music, and kind of following that path, it led me into appraising. But from a very young age, I just loved music, and I was really enamored with the piano. There was always a piano at my grandmother's house, and so we would go over there on the weekends, and I would get to tinker around. And eventually that turned into a pretty serious thing. And I ended up going to music school. I got a scholarship and went to the Berklee College of Music in Boston, which at the time, I grew up in Connecticut, I should say. So I started on the East Coast. Okay. And so I ended up going to music school. And then after school, I got out, and to be honest, I was just tired of being broke, and I had, no
Wait
money.
A musician broke. Somehow that doesn't fit. I thought all musicians were rich, right?
No, I know. I was the odd one out on that one for sure. Somehow I missed one of my economics classes. Or something. But yeah, I worked through school. I had 2 or 3 jobs just trying to get through, and I worked on the weekends and everything. And so I got out of school, and I was like, I want to keep pursuing music. I love this thing, but how can I build a future?
Right.
Yeah. How can I do this? And luckily, a buddy of mine from Connecticut, my best friend from high school, his dad was a longtime appraiser, and he called me up, and he's a really charismatic guy, and just really, he knows how to get me going. And so he calls me up, and he's like, man, you gotta get into this appraising thing, man. It's amazing. You're going to make so much money. It's going to change your life. You can't even believe it.
So he's a liar too, right?
So, he totally sold me on it. And so I called up McKissick, took my courses, and had one of my music professors proctor the exam for me, and so that's how I kind of got into it. And I started appraising in Connecticut. And then a couple months after starting appraising, I got one of the best jobs of my life, which is I was hired to be a musician on a cruise ship.
All right.
So
cool.
So I just had a couple months under my belt, and I was really enjoying it. And then I had to say goodbye for 7 months, essentially.
Wow.
You live on the ship, and you play a different show every night, and you wake up in a different place every morning. It's probably the best job I will ever have.
Really, that is
but,
cool.
But you can't stay with that job forever, because eventually you have to build a home on land. So but luckily I met my wife out there, and we did a couple contracts. And so I would go out for 7 months, and then I would come back and appraise for 7 to 10 months and keep working up my hours and things like that. And then go back out and I've been really fortunate. I've been able to keep that balance between appraising and music to this day. And I've been really thankful for to be able to appraise real estate, and kind of keep some balance in my life.
So I have to ask, because I know the listeners are screaming at me to make sure that I follow up with a question here, because I get the question all the time from appraisers who this may not be their only gig, or maybe they want to live in 2 different places and split their time. And so the question that comes to mind from the listeners, I think, would be, how do you appraise for 6-7 months and then leave for 2 or 3 months and come back and still have a business going?
Right. Well, in the beginning, I was lucky again, because I was working under a supervisor appraiser, and he was able to let me go and fill the gap. And then when I came back, I was able to get back on, and he still had work for me, so I could work through my hours. And nowadays, I mean, I've built my business so that I can do this, so that I can leave at the drop of a hat.
Nice.
And it's not really as difficult as you would think. I mean, I keep things very simple. I guess I should say that up front. It's just me and an assistant.
Okay.
And I've gone down the road of thinking about expanding that and maybe bringing some more people on board and things like that. But for me, that has worked for me. Just have me and the assistant. And so when something comes up, I'm able to put those clients on hold and go do what I need to do. I mean, for example, one of the just an example of what happens in the music industry is I remember one time I got the call to be the keyboard player for Britney Spears, and so
and you're like, let me think about it.
Yeah, and so it's a Thursday, right? And they call me and they're like, "Hey, can you be in England on Wednesday for this leg of the tour?" It was her European tour. So I'm doing the math, and I'm like, okay, so I have maybe 6 days at most to shut everything down, learn and memorize a 90-minute show, program all of the keyboard sounds and everything, and then get my butt over to Europe and be able to do this thing. And I just called my clients, tell them what's going on. Listen, I finished as many assignments as I could, right? And then I called them and tried to get other things reassigned and things like that. And I'm able to do that because, and I think it's probably because it's a small operation. It's just me and my assistant, and my assistant actually has other work that she does as well. So when I need to go away for a couple weeks or a couple months or whatever, she is not put out of work. She has other work that she can do, and she can kind of expand on that work for a while. And then when I get back, she can come back and kind of fill in the gaps there.
Sounds to me like it's not as big a stress as, and maybe it is. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but balancing those two things, you've set up your business in such a way that yes, it takes some doing. Yes, as you said, you got to do the numbers and the calculations. Can this be done? But I think a lot of appraisers feel very tied to their job, and I get calls from Britney Spears all the time, and I basically have to turn her down. I've got too much else going on.
I totally understand. And of course, that was my first, reaction. Like, I can't do this. I need to go appraise real estate.
Right.
Be, gallivanting around the globe right now. But yeah, you're exactly right. It takes some, it takes some thought, but you can set it up. If that's your goal and you keep that as your end goal in mind, you can find a way to do it. And if I can do it, anybody can do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask, who else have you played for?
Well, most recently I played with Engelbert Humperdinck.
Wow.
And that was fun because, Britney Spears is a modern legend, and, Engelbert is just,
it's just a legend.
He's best friends with Elvis and Sinatra and, all those guys. So that was amazing. That was definitely a life achievement.
Very cool. Very cool. So tell me, you started out in Connecticut, but now you're in LA. What's that story?
Yeah. Well, I started out in Connecticut, and, my wife and I, so my wife is also an entertainer. She's a singer.
Okay.
And so I was doing real estate during the day, and then we were both driving to New York and Boston. Connecticut's kind of the midpoint, to pursue our musical endeavors. And after a few years of that, you just get tired of driving, always on the road. It was 2 hours one way. And I would get back at 4 a.m, on a Thursday morning, and then get up and go to my inspections. And so we decided, where can we go where we can pursue everything we want? And, it's all kind of there. And we packed up and we moved across the country, and, we did it without very many prospects. We just knew, like, we want to build our life there. And so we packed up and went over, and I'll never forget my first job coming to California was I got a job at the Second City Comedy Club, and I was getting paid $30 an hour, or $30 a show.
Wow.
To be the music director for the shows.
Right.
So, that's where you start off, and then you work your way up. But in the appraisal world, that was a huge transition. And I'm really glad that I started in Connecticut, actually, because Connecticut real estate market is so diverse that I really learned how to appraise anything in the residential market. Because in Connecticut, you have houses built in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, all the way up to brand new construction. You have waterfront, you have acreage, you have ultra modern, you have view homes, you have wood cabins in the middle of the forest,
Right.
And we would just do anything, I mean, I was hungry in those years and I wanted to do everything. So I really got my feet wet in a lot of different areas. And then when I came to California, I thought everything was so easy because there's so many tract neighborhoods and things. And of course there are very complex properties out here as well. But I finally got to experience what appraisers were talking about, like, appraising in the tract neighborhood where your grid looks so beautiful and there's barely any adjustments on it.
Cookie cutters actually exist, right?
Oh, I had never experienced that before. I had gone years and I thought this is what appraisal is. Every house is literally different from the next. So that was a big transition for sure.
Yeah, I'll bet. So talk to me, tell me some stories, scary stories, interesting stories, humorous things that have happened to you. Let's talk boots on the ground appraising for Tim.
Sure. Well, okay. So when I first moved to California, as I said, we just packed up and moved. And so, I had just found a job as an appraiser, and I was working under actually one of your good friends, Murray Berg, who you've had on the podcast before. So he took me on, and I owe a lot to Murray Berg. He is an amazing appraiser and an amazing friend.
He is,
so he took me under his wing to teach me California, but I moved out here and I didn't have very much money, and so I was driving around this beater car that was like a 25-year-old Chevy Prism.
Nice.
If anybody knows that make, it's like all rusted out, just completely. I used to call it the Death Star. That was my nickname for it, because at any moment that thing was just going to explode, and we knew it. But so I was driving around in that thing one day taking pictures, and a woman pulled up next to me and rolls down her window, and she's visually upset. I mean, even before saying anything to me, she's already, I can tell, like, okay, here we go. Get ready. And she's like, hey, who are you? What are you doing? And I'm like, hey, ma'am, it's okay. I'm a real estate appraiser. I'm just taking some pictures. You can't take pictures. That's illegal. Who are you? What are you doing? And she wouldn't believe me. And I'm like, it's okay. This is part of my job. I'm just taking pictures. Yeah, right. If you're a real estate appraiser, show me a business card. So I'm like, okay. So I reach into my bag. I pull out a card. I hand it over. And she takes a look at the card and she's all upset, but I can see that she's like, okay, he's an appraiser. So before she speeds out, she stares daggers at me and she goes, well, you need to buy a better car, and then drives off.
In other words, she had a hard time believing you were a real estate appraiser driving a Prism, right?
Yeah. And, I had to laugh because it was like an upper middle class neighborhood. These houses were 800,000 and up, it was not a place to be afraid, but she was really worked up, and I just found it hilarious. And then I was like, but you know what? She's got a point. It's time. I need to get a new car.
Love it.
That was the end of the Death Star.
I love it. All right. Tell me another.
Yeah. Well, the scariest thing that I've ever encountered as an appraiser was early on in my career. And I was, like I said before, I was just hungry. I just wanted to work. I wanted to learn. And so I would just accept any assignment. And at that time, there were a lot of REOs happening, it was shortly after the crash. And so I ended up going to a lot of, vacant and distressed properties and things like that. And I was living just 20 minutes north of Hartford at the time.
Okay.
And Hartford is a city where there's good neighborhoods, and then there's bad neighborhoods, and then there's very, very tough neighborhoods, high crime rate. And, me, a young man, didn't really think too much of it. And I got assigned an REO multifamily, and I should have known something was up. It wasn't the homeowner, it wasn't a listing agent or anything, but I think it was a contractor who was actually my point of contact. And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah, let's meet down there at 8 a.m. And I typically didn't do assignments that early, but he was really adamant about it. So I was like, okay, we'll go at 8 a.m. And I later found out that the 8 in the morning thing was a safety thing. You know, you should go during daylight in the morning where not very many people around. So anyways, I show up to this property and it's a 3-story multifamily. All the windows are boarded up, you know, completely, you know, it looks like it's going to fall over. And this guy shows up and he has like combat boots on. He's got like a battalion. He's got this huge heavy flashlight that he could probably use as a weapon. I mean, he was like ready for whatever was about to happen. And he stops me before we go in and he's like, just so you know, sometimes there's people in the houses and, you know, sometimes things are happening. So just stay behind me. And I was like, oh, okay. We open up the door, we go in, it's pitch black, you know, all the windows are boarded up. So I have my little flashlight. I'm trying to get my pictures and I'm kind of, you know, I'm starting to get a little freaked out. It's very dark. And all of a sudden we hear someone moving and we hear some noise behind a door. And then I'm really, you know, my heart rate's really going up. And this guy is just, oh my gosh, he had no fear. He goes straight for the door and he opens it up. And I kid you not, the smell, it was it was like the most amazing, like stank weed marijuana smell ever. It was like as if you had a skunk, but like the skunk had weed aroma, you know, like a scented candle or something. It was so it was just blasted you right in the face. And then we heard some people scuffling and then they started shouting and this guy just starts shouting right back. And then we hear them like starting to come up the stairs and this guy turns around and yells at me, Tim, get out of here, get out of here. And so,
wow,
I'm no hero. I turn around and I hightail it right out the front door. And this guy stays in and screams at these guys. And then before I know it, the cop cars pull up. The chief of police showed up. And,
oh my gosh.
And this guy, probably 6'4", he is just a brick wall. Like this is exactly who you want to show up.
Right.
When something
you
like
want him
happens.
on your side.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he walks right up and he said like 2 words to me. He just took a look at me and he goes, this one? I said, yep. He just walks right through the front door, doesn't turn on his flashlight. He's just going straight in. And I guess the people who were there had run out the back door or something and they were gone. But, you know, all of a sudden there's 7 police cruisers all around. And I'm sitting there thinking, I still haven't inspected the 2nd or 3rd floor of this thing.
What now, right? What now?
Yeah. What am I supposed to do now?
That is great. That is great. You know, we experience a lot of things as appraisers. I love these. We're talking with Tim Lullis. He's willing to come on and tell his story about appraising, about his musical career. When we get back, I want to talk a little bit about your biggest failure and maybe circle back into your biggest success, Tim. But I want to pause here and remind everybody that we're sponsored by 3 great companies. One of them, of course, is my E&O company. For many, many years, I was with a different company. And frankly, I guess you don't know what you don't know. And, you know, I just kept renewing until I found out about a better company. Number 1, they dropped my rates. Number 2, their coverage is amazing. And number 3, folks, if you have not seen the benefits, I ask you to just go to orep.org and just click on the benefits tab at the top. You would be shocked and amazed at what you can get beyond just coverage for E&O from an E&O company. OREP is where it's at. It's orep.org, OREP.org. Alamode, of course, is the software that I've been using for years. And there's a reason, folks. I'm all about technology and I'm all about efficiencies. I'm also about quality. And bringing all of those together is not done any better than with Alamode. Alamode, of course, is the company that leads the industry in report writing. Folks, if you're with any other software, I highly, highly recommend that you check them out. Go to alamode.com. Better yet, pick up the phone and call them. Talk to a sales rep and say, listen, I'm with ABC Company. Tell me why I should switch. You'll be amazed at what they can give you. Alamode.com or 800-ALAMODE. Finally, we're sponsored by a great company saving appraisers about 30 to 45 minutes every report. For us, it's about 40 minutes. 40 minutes saved on every report through DataMaster. DataMaster allows us to be able to import information to avoid fat fingering it, to avoid mistakes. So our quality is higher, our speed is better, it pays for itself and then some every single month. It's datamasterusa.com is where you find out more. One more time, datamasterusa.com. And welcome back to the program, everybody. Talking appraiser stories with Mr. Tim Lullis of Los Angeles. Tim, welcome back to the program.
Thanks.
It's really good to have you on, man. This is one of the most unique interviews I think I've ever had. I guarantee Britney Spears is going to be in the description for this episode. Talk to me about your biggest failure, and it doesn't necessarily have to be appraisal related.
Well, I think my biggest failure may be appraisal related. I mean, I remember when I went for my certification, the state of Connecticut chose 7 random appraisals from my archive
7
to review.
Ouch.
Yeah, I know. And I don't know what was going on that year, but
they had a lot of time on their hands, obviously, right?
I know. So, and I talked to other appraisers and they said the same thing. Wow. So anyway, I went in there and there was one particular board member that just wasn't satisfied with my work and really drilled in and really asked me all the tough questions. How did you support this? How did you support that? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And that was the first time in my career that I had been really challenged like that, and it was very difficult. And so they, my first time around, they denied me and they said, we think you need to go back. And I was really discouraged because I thought that I was doing good work. And so I had to go back again and again and again. And I ended up calling up this board member, and this particular board member was also an assessor in one of the towns in Connecticut. So I went down to the assessor's office and had a couple of meetings. And
way to be proactive.
Well, I knew I had to do something, and I knew that I needed to have some kind of a connection with this person, so that so that I can learn from them, and they could also not just see me as just this guy who shows up and I'm more than the report that I'm writing, things like that. And so it was several months, and I had to go back there several times. And it was a really tough time. I remember waking up a lot of mornings just having this like pit in my stomach because I was intimidated to go before that board. When you step in, it's like stepping into a courtroom.
Absolutely.
You have 5 to 7 people or however many are in your state sitting up there. They're always elevated. They're always on really big chairs. They have a big microphone. They're looking down on you, and you have to know your stuff. So that was really tough. But I think one of my biggest successes came out of that because I didn't give up. I decided I do want to keep doing this, and it ended up working out because this person on the board, when I went in for my final hearing, she spoke very highly of me. She was very happy with the work that I did, and she put me in touch with another appraiser who ended up giving me a lot of work and teaching me a lot and pushing me in the right direction. And after that whole experience, I feel like I was a much better appraiser, and I was on a much better path toward really understanding what I was doing. And so it was worth it. But man, those were dark days.
Tough getting there.
Yeah.
Tim, the listeners can't see you, just audio only, but you're a young guy. You've got a lifetime ahead of you of appraising, valuation, music, what have you. Tell me a little bit about what you foresee happening in the next few years regarding the valuation industry. Where do you see yourself going long term? That's
a tough one. Unfortunately, I don't have any information that isn't, I don't have any secret information. I know. I wish I had the answers. It's anybody's guess. I've read up on all the things. Our computer's going to take over. Is our legislation going to be passed that's going to just completely change things again, like what it did in 2010? It's anybody's guess, but I think a lot of people are afraid of those two things, and I guess I choose to be optimistic about it. I see what happened to a lot of appraisers who had actual firms with 20 to 30 appraisers under them when the crash happened in 2008, and how some of them survived and how some of them didn't survive. And obviously that was a really challenging time for everyone, but I find that the people who were able to stay in the industry and keep their business open were those who were flexible in their business model and had a good diversity of clients, and they weren't just pigeonholed, on one client or just one type of client, and I think that gives me some optimism because I see how appraisers were able to pivot in that really time of crisis. For a lot of appraisal businesses, that was a huge crisis, and people were able to pivot, and they still have businesses today. So I also feel like we're always going to need the human component. I really believe, appraising is part science, part art form.
I agree.
And I think it's the art part of it, that I really enjoy and keeps me inspired about this industry. But, I think that aspect of it is always going to give us something to do. It might change what we're doing. There's talk about how maybe in the future there will be someone who will do the inspection for us or gather all the data for us, and then we'll just be at home typing up the report. Some of our functions might change a little bit, but I stay optimistic that we'll have work.
Yeah, I love that. I love optimism, and I can feel it from you. Give us a helpful tip, my friend. If you were to give a piece of advice to the millions of listeners on the other side of the microphone, what would that be?
Oh man, that's intimidating because I've been in
billions.
Just because I've been in the industry for 11 years, but I know that probably most of your listeners have been in the industry twice that time. So I always seek counsel from people older and wiser than me. But I guess one thing that I would say, just that I kind of see in some of the appraiser forums that I keep up to date with, is to not operate from fear, like a place of fear, especially in your business. This pandemic has been a really interesting time for appraisers, and I see some appraisers out there who are operating under this mindset of, I need to take everything I can now because it might not be there tomorrow. And if you operate like that, you're going to burn out. Your personal life is going to go down the drain. Your business is going to suffer. You're not going to be able to keep the quality of work that you want to be doing if you're completely overloaded and you never sleep. And, like I said, I've been here for 11 years, and yes, there have been ups and downs for sure. There have been slow months, but in those 11 years, I've never had anything shut down completely. I've always been able to keep food on my table. So, don't operate from fear. Try to have a good work-life balance, and don't be afraid of your clients, especially now. It's right now, the pandemic is a terrible, terrible thing. But the one silver lining is that almost all the appraisers that I know are completely flooded with work right now, which gives us so much leverage. You can say no. You can ask for a higher fee. You can ask for a longer due date.
Wait a minute. You can say no? You can ask for a higher fee?
You can say whatever you want as far as I'm concerned right now, Don't be afraid. You're not going to offend anybody, Just ask for what you need, and I think you'll do all right.
Love it. Ready for the lightning round?
Okay.
All
yes,
right.
I'm ready.
All right. Inside out or outside in? I'm not talking the movie. I'm talking.
I am 100% outside in.
Love it. Okay. Man after my own heart. Tape, roller, or laser?
Laser.
Love it. Tablet, computer, or clipboard and pen?
There's only one option here. It's got to be a tablet.
Look at you. So you're not just young at heart, you're young in your brain as well. Okay. Appraisal software?
A la mode.
And favorite thing to do when you're not appraising, I'm going to assume tickle the ivories?
Yes, but also spending time with my wife.
Good for you.
For sure.
Good for you. Yeah. And one goal for this year, my friend.
Ooh, one goal. Well, I am actually about to become a father. So my goal for this year is to just prepare myself as much as anybody can.
Yeah, right. Good luck with that, right?
Yeah, for that eventuality. That's my 100% focus right now.
Well, congratulations. It's a great experience to bring your first child into the world. And if you're like me, you're second, third, and fourth, and then it's even greater when they start to leave down the road. So
so much to look forward to.
You've got a lot to look forward to, my friend. Thank you for taking time. It's great to get to know you, and appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dustin. This was a real pleasure.
It's been a pleasure on my side as well. That was Tim Lullis of Los Angeles, California. Folks, if you're willing to tell your story, I would love to have you on, have a chat with you, get to know you a little bit better. Just drop me a line at theappraisercoach.com. If you're intimidated by emailing me directly, if you don't think I actually read those things, I do, but you can always reach my assistant. Her email address is theassistant@theappraisercoach.com. Would love to hear from you and would love to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me, folks, and we'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Beautiful, my friend. That was wonderful. Holy cow. That was probably one of the most unique interviews I've ever had.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great.
So many things, your experience on the music side, but even more intriguing to me was this ability for you to balance both of those worlds. I think that's something that intimidates a lot of appraisers. And I think you telling your story is going to give them a lot of hope.
I hope so, because it's not easy, right? I mean, being your own boss is not easy, managing schedules. So that's been my number one focus. And yeah, I really hope it does inspire people, because I really believe anybody can do it.
Well, the big thing I love is when people have a dream. I hate when they feel like they're in a box and they're tied in. This idea that you can't do things differently because that's just not the way they're done. Most appraiser would say, no, I mean, this is my one and only job. There's no way I even have time to pursue anything else. And I just reject that. I just think that, you put your mind to something and you can do anything you want to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. 100%.
Thank you, my friend. Congratulations on the baby. I love that. I hope everything goes well there. Beautiful wife. I searched a little bit on the internet a little bit while I was talking to you, and you guys are just a cute couple. So you're going to make great babies, I'm sure. So
I appreciate you saying that.
We'll email you this audio before we send it out. So if there's any changes you want to make, you can let us know. But otherwise, I'm not sure how far out we are. Probably about 8 to 10 weeks right now. So it might be close to Christmas time before this actually comes out. But maybe we can squeeze it in a little bit sooner than that. We'll see.
Sounds good.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much. Thanks
Awesome.
for meeting early too. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Dustin.
Likewise. Take care, man.
See ya.
Bye-bye now.